Hi, welcome to Conflict Story, where we bring you the best and most fascinating stories just for you. Let's dive right into one of those stories. It begins like this.
My name's Alex, and I've lived in my cozy three-bedroom home on the outskirts of Asheville, North Carolina, for nearly 15 years. It's a peaceful neighborhood, a mix of retirees and young families. We're not part of any fancy planned community, just a regular street with regular folks. That's why I was utterly floored when a so-called homeowners association tried to muscle their way into my life over my backyard pool. About 5 years ago, I treated myself to a modest luxury, a 14 MRS 28 in-ground pool with a small wooden deck. It was nothing extravagant, just a nice spot to cool off during Asheville's humid summers. I followed every legal step, permits, inspections, the whole 9 yards. The pool became my sanctuary, a place to unwind after long days managing my bookstore downtown. My neighbors occasionally came over for a swim, and I even helped old Mr. Porter next door rehab his knee with water exercises. Life was good. Then last spring, everything changed. One bright May afternoon, I spotted two strangers in my backyard. They wore crisp polo shirts and carried clipboards, walking around like they owned the place. Alarmed, I stepped out to confront them. "Can I help you?" I asked, keeping my tone calm but firm. The taller man glanced up, startled but quickly composed himself. "Good afternoon, sir. We're conducting an inspection for the Sycamore Ridge Homeowners Association." I frowned. "I'm sorry, but I'm not part of any homeowner association." The shorter man checked his clipboard. "This is 314 Rosewood Lane, correct?" "Yes, but I've lived here for 15 years and there's never been a homeowners association," I said, growing irritated. The taller one smiled thinly. "Well, as of January, your property falls under our extended jurisdiction. You'll be hearing from us soon." They left without further explanation, leaving me bewildered and uneasy. A week later, a certified letter arrived from none other than Karen Wilson, the president of the Sycamore Ridge Homeowner Association. The letter accused me of installing a non-compliant pool and demanded I either remove it or make it available to the homeowner association as a community amenity. Fines of $200 per day loomed if I didn't comply. I was livid. My property wasn't part of Sycamore Ridge. Their cookie-cutter development was half a mile away, built just 3 years ago. My pool predated their existence. I immediately contacted a lawyer friend, Mark, who drafted a cease and desist letter. We sent it to Karen and the Homeowner Association Board, stating in no uncertain terms that they had no authority over my property. But Karen wasn't backing down. 2 weeks later, I woke to the sound of construction in my backyard. Karen and a crew were erecting a chain-link fence around my pool. Fuming, I stormed outside. "What the hell is going on?" I demanded. Karen turned, her smug expression infuriating. "Since you've refused to comply, we're taking action. Your pool is now a shared community resource. Get off my property or I'll call the police," I snapped. Karen's confidence wavered but didn't break. "We're within our rights." She wasn't. The police arrived within 15 minutes and ordered Karen's crew to leave. They confirmed my property wasn't under homeowner association jurisdiction. Karen's claim that their rules extended to nearby homes was baseless, but the battle was just beginning. Over the next few weeks, I received a barrage of threatening letters. The homeowner association even tried suing me, claiming I owed back dues for benefiting from their community. The stress mounted, but I wasn't alone. My neighbors rallied behind me, appalled by the homeowner association's overreach. Together, we formed a neighborhood alliance and began digging into Sycamore Ridge's activities. What we found shocked us. Karen had been quietly expanding the homeowner association's jurisdiction without proper legal backing, pressuring nearby homeowners into compliance with bogus fines and threats. Our alliance filed a countersuit, demanding an end to Karen's antics. Meanwhile, tensions boiled over. I found my lawn littered with pink flamingos and a sign mocking me as Pool Scrooge. The homeowner association's tactics were turning neighbors against neighbors. But we held firm. This wasn't just about my pool, it was about standing up to bullies who thought they could control us. By midsummer, the legal showdown was in full swing. Karen's arrogance had backfired. Even some Sycamore Ridge residents were fed up with her power trip. When the homeowner association's own lawyer admitted their expanded jurisdiction had no legal merit, the case crumbled. The court ruled in our favor, ordering the homeowner association to cease all actions against my property. Karen's defeat was a turning point. The residents of Sycamore Ridge voted her out, replacing her with a more reasonable board. Meanwhile, our neighborhood celebrated with a block party, and yes, the pool was the centerpiece. The fight had been grueling, but in the end, we reclaimed our peace and showed that community matters more than control. After the court's ruling, I thought the nightmare was over. The Sycamore Ridge Homeowner Association had been soundly defeated. Karen was ousted, and my neighbors and I could finally breathe easier. But as it turned out, Karen wasn't one to go down quietly. The first sign of trouble came a week after the court's decision. A neighbor, Sarah, called me one evening, sounding alarmed. "Alex, I don't know if you've noticed, but Karen's been going door to door in Sycamore Ridge. She's claiming she's organizing a petition to reinstate the old homeowner association rules and take the fight to a higher court." I sighed, running a hand through my hair. Doesn't she understand that's pointless? The court already declared their jurisdiction over our neighborhood illegal. Sarah hesitated. She's not stopping there. She's telling people you bribed the judge and that your pool is an eyesore that's driving down their property values. I clenched my jaw. This wasn't just a matter of principle anymore. Karen was now actively defaming me to salvage her reputation. Determined to stay ahead of her schemes, I called a meeting with the Maple Street Community Alliance. About 30 of my neighbors gathered in my living room, ready to brainstorm ways to counter Karen's antics. "We can't just ignore her," I began. "She's trying to turn this into a PR war, and if we let her control the narrative, people might start believing her lies." Ted, my next-door neighbor, raised his hand. "Why don't we take a page out of her book? Let's organize an event that shows we're proud of our neighborhood. Something public, where we can invite the media and highlight the positives." "Like what?" Sarah asked. "A community cleanup day," Ted suggested. "Or maybe a block party. We can use it to showcase how unified we are, despite her attempts to divide us." The room buzzed with agreement, and we settled on hosting a neighborhood block party. The event would include food trucks, live music, games for kids, and of course, a centerpiece: my pool, open to all our neighbors. As we planned, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. This wasn't just about proving Karen wrong. It was about showing everyone what true community spirit looked like. The day of the block party arrived, and the turnout exceeded our wildest expectations. Residents from Maple Street and even a handful from Sycamore Ridge showed up, eager to enjoy the festivities. My backyard transformed into a lively hub of laughter, music, and splashing water. People mingled, sharing stories and food, while kids raced each other down the makeshift water slide. Midway through the event, I spotted a small group of Sycamore Ridge residents huddled together. Among them was Dave Simmons, one of Karen's former supporters, who had vocally opposed me during the initial dispute. Taking a deep breath, I approached them with a friendly smile. "Glad you could make it," I said, extending my hand to Dave. To my surprise, he shook it. "I have to admit, Alex, I misjudged you. Karen painted you as the villain, but seeing this today, it's clear you care about this neighborhood." "I appreciate that," I replied sincerely. "We all want the same thing: a safe, welcoming place to live. It's just a shame it took all this conflict to get here." As we chatted, I noticed Karen lingering at the edge of the event, arms crossed and lips pressed into a thin line. She was clearly not pleased. But the sight of neighbors from both sides of the dispute coming together seemed to take the wind out of her sails. A few days later, I received an unexpected email from Dave. He explained that many Sycamore Ridge residents had started questioning Karen's leadership after attending the block party. In fact, a faction was forming within their homeowner association to prevent her from stirring up further trouble. "We're holding a special meeting next week to vote on some major changes," he wrote. "If you're willing, we'd like you to come and speak. Share your perspective, help us bridge the divide. Maybe we can finally put this behind us." I hesitated. Walking into an homeowner association meeting as the man they'd once considered their enemy felt like walking into a lion's den. But if it meant ending this madness for good, I had to try. The meeting was held in the Sycamore Ridge Clubhouse, a sleek, modern building that contrasted sharply with the rustic charm of my neighborhood. As I walked in, I felt dozens of eyes on me, some curious, others wary. Karen sat at the front of the room, her expression icy. Dave introduced me, and I stepped up to the podium. "Good evening," I began. "I know I'm probably the last person you expected to see here, and I'm sure some of you still have reservations about me. but I'm here because I believe we have more in common than we realize. For the next 15 minutes, I recounted my story. I spoke about the joy my pool had brought to my neighborhood, the stress of the legal battle, and the importance of mutual respect. We don't have to agree on everything, I concluded, but we can choose to be good neighbors. That's all I've ever wanted. The room was silent for a moment before a few people began to clap. Soon the applause spread. Even Karen couldn't hide her surprise. By the end of the meeting, the Sycamore Ridge residents voted overwhelmingly to implement new bylaws limiting the homeowner association's power and ensuring transparency in their decision-making. Karen's influence was officially over. Walking out of that clubhouse, I felt an immense sense of relief. The battle had been long and grueling, but it was worth it. Not only had we reclaimed our rights, but we had also built a stronger, more connected community in the process. Little did I know, though, Karen wasn't entirely finished. While her reign as homeowner association president was over, she still had one more surprise up her sleeve, one that would test our newfound unity like never before. With Karen officially ousted and the new bylaws firmly in place, I thought life in our little corner of Asheville would finally return to normal. But as I had learned the hard way, Karen wasn't someone who gave up easily. Her final move would push the limits of both her audacity and our patience. It started with a knock on my door one chilly autumn evening. I opened it to find Sarah, my neighbor, clutching a letter with a worried expression. "Alex, you need to see that," she said, handing it over. It was a neatly printed notice from Karen, who was now acting as a private community consultant. She claimed that despite her removal from the homeowner association, she was still committed to preserving the property values and aesthetic harmony of the area. The letter included a list of recommendations, including restrictions on exterior paint colors, lawn decorations, and even the number of cars allowed in driveways. "It's not enforceable," I said, scanning the document. "She has no authority anymore." Sarah nodded. "But some people don't realize that. She's already convinced a few residents to voluntarily comply. I think she's trying to weasel her way back into power." The idea of Karen manipulating people's ignorance to rebuild her influence made my blood boil. I decided to confront her directly. The next day, I walked over to her house, which sat just inside the Sycamore Ridge development. She answered the door with a saccharine smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Alex," she said, feigning surprise. "What a pleasant surprise. What brings you here?" I held up the letter. "Care to explain this?" Her smile didn't falter. "Oh, that. I'm simply offering guidance to help our community maintain its charm. Surely you can understand the importance of standards." "Karen, you're not part of the homeowner association anymore. You have no right to impose any standards, let alone send these letters. It's misleading and borderline harassment." She crossed her arms. "I'm not forcing anyone to do anything. These are merely suggestions. If some residents choose to follow them, that's their decision." It was clear she had no intention of stopping, so I decided to take a different approach. "Fine, but if you keep sending these out, we'll have no choice but to involve our attorney again. And this time, we'll pursue legal action for defamation and harassment." Her smile wavered slightly, but she quickly recovered. "Do what you feel is necessary, Alex. I'm only trying to help." I walked away, shaking my head. Karen might have lost her official title, but her meddling wasn't over. Over the next few weeks, Karen ramped up her antics. She organized a petition to implement new community standards, attempting to gain support from both Sycamore Ridge and Maple Street residents. She even hosted a neighborhood beautification seminar, complete with refreshments and printed flyers, touting her vision for a more unified community. Most people saw through her thinly veiled power grab, but a small group of her former allies began circulating her petition. Rumors spread that Karen was planning to establish a new organization, an independent coalition, to enforce her standards. "She's like a bad rash that won't go away," Ted muttered during one of our alliance meetings. "What do we do now?" Mark, our lawyer friend, leaned forward. "We've already dealt with her legally. This time we need to focus on educating the community. If we can show people what she's really up to, she'll lose any support she has left." We agreed to create a newsletter detailing the history of Karen's overreach, complete with court records and testimonials from residents who had been harassed by her. Sarah volunteered to distribute it door to door, and Ted offered to cover printing costs. The newsletter was a hit. Neighbors who had been on the fence about Karen's consulting suddenly saw her in a new light. Calls to join her coalition dried up, and her petition failed to gain enough signatures. By the time winter rolled around, Karen's influence had dwindled to almost nothing. For the first time in months, things felt calm. The Maple Street Community Alliance decided to host a holiday party to celebrate. We decorated the neighborhood with lights, set up a hot chocolate station, and even had a visit from Santa Claus for the kids. It was a joyful evening that reminded us all of the power of unity. Karen's house, notably, remained dark and unadorned. She didn't make an appearance, and for once, no one seemed to mind. As the new year approached, I reflected on the past year's chaos. Karen had been a formidable opponent, but our neighborhood's resilience had won out. We'd faced her attempts to control us and come out stronger, more connected, and more determined to protect our rights. I'd learned a lot about the importance of standing up to bullies, but also about the value of community. Together, we had shown that no amount of scheming or manipulation could break the bond of neighbors who truly cared for one another. And that, I realized, was worth every challenge we'd faced. But as peaceful as things seemed, I couldn't shake the feeling that Karen wasn't entirely done with her meddling. If there was one thing I'd learned, it was that Karen always had one more card to play. I just hoped we'd be ready for it. Winter passed quietly, and for a time, it seemed as though Karen had finally retreated into the background of our lives. The Maple Street Community Alliance thrived, hosting monthly events and fostering a newfound sense of unity among the residents. But just as we began to feel truly at ease, Karen played her final, most outrageous card. It happened in early March, when an official-looking notice appeared in every mailbox on Maple Street. The letter, bearing the header, Sycamore Ridge Community Coalition, claimed that Karen's new organization had filed a formal proposal with the city to annex Maple Street into Sycamore Ridge's jurisdiction. According to the notice, this move would ensure consistent property standards and improved community amenities, and a public hearing had already been scheduled. When I read the letter, my heart sank. This wasn't just another one of Karen's schemes. It was a serious legal maneuver, one that could potentially undo all the progress we'd made in reclaiming our independence. That night, our alliance convened an emergency meeting in my living room. The mood was tense as Mark, our lawyer, explained the implications of the proposal. If the city council approves the annexation, he said gravely, Maple Street would officially become part of Sycamore Ridge, subject to their homeowner association rules and governance. Karen's group would have full authority over our properties. The room erupted into a chorus of disbelief and anger. Sarah, ever the voice of reason, raised her hand to quiet everyone down. "We've fought her before, and we can do it again," she said firmly. "But we need to be smart about this. We can't let her control the narrative." Mark nodded. "The public hearing is our chance to make our case. We need to show the city council why this annexation is not only unnecessary, but harmful to our community." Over the next 2 weeks, we mobilized like never before. We gathered signatures for a counter-petition, prepared a detailed presentation for the hearing, and even reached out to local media to shed light on Karen's history of overreach. The story gained traction, and a local news station ran a segment titled Neighborhood Feud, Maple Street Fights Back Against Homeowner Association Power Grab. The day of the hearing, the council chamber was packed. On one side sat Karen and a handful of her staunchest supporters, armed with binders and prepared statements. On the other side sat our alliance, bolstered by dozens of neighbors who had come to show their support. The tension in the room was palpable as the council members took their seats. Karen was the first to speak. She delivered a polished but transparently self-serving argument, emphasizing community cohesion and the benefits of unified standards. She painted Maple Street as a chaotic, unregulated mess that desperately needed the structure her coalition could provide. When it was our turn, Mark took the lead, presenting a meticulously crafted rebuttal. He outlined our neighborhood's long history of independence, highlighted Karen's previous legal defeats, and presented testimonials from Maple Street residents about the harassment they'd endured under her leadership. I followed with my own statement, sharing my personal experience and the toll Karen's actions had taken on our community. Maple Street isn't just a collection of houses, I concluded, my voice steady despite the nerves. It's a community built on mutual respect and neighborly cooperation. We don't need an outside organization dictating how we live. We've shown that we're capable of thriving on our own, and we ask that you respect our right to continue doing so. The room burst into applause as I stepped down. Even some of the council members couldn't hide their smiles. After hours of presentations and deliberations, the council reached their decision. The annexation proposal was denied, with the council citing overwhelming opposition from Maple Street residents and a lack of justification for the move. Karen's face was a mask of fury as the verdict was announced, but there was nothing she could do. As we left the chamber, our group erupted in cheers. Strangers hugged, and for the first time in months, I felt an immense weight lift off my shoulders. We had won, not just against Karen, but against the idea that one person could impose their will on an entire community. In the weeks that followed, life on Maple Street returned to normal. Karen's coalition quietly dissolved, and she seemed to fade from public view. Rumor had it she'd put her house on the market, though no one could confirm it. Meanwhile, our alliance continued to strengthen. We organized a neighborhood garden project, started a book club, and even planned a summer barbecue, all reminders of what we'd fought so hard to protect. One sunny afternoon, as I lounged by my pool with a glass of iced tea, I reflected on the journey we'd been through. It hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it. We'd stood up for our rights, faced down a formidable opponent, and emerged stronger than ever. Karen's reign was over, but the lessons we'd learned would stay with us. Our neighborhood had proven that true community isn't about rules and regulations. It's about people coming together to support one another. And as I watched my neighbors laughing and chatting in their yards, I knew we'd built something far more enduring than any homeowner association. Are you hungry for more slices of stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to never miss out on any videos. See you tomorrow.